Thank you. Hi, everyone. Eric from Helps. Glad to have you here. Thursday, May 29th. My name's Eric, uh, founder of Helps. If you can hear me okay, please say in the chat feature so I can hear you. I can tell you. Um, Good to have you here. And I got to get my little late getting organized today, but we'll have a good session. We'll be able to talk about a lot of things. So my name's Eric, been attorney now for 46 years, the founder of Helps. Helps is a national law firm that represents seniors and disabled persons who owe debt they can't afford to pay. We help seniors and disabled persons that struggle with debt so that they can get some relief in their life. They don't have to be hounded by creditors anymore. Um, that's what we do. And you can put your questions in the chat feature. I will try to answer them. Good to be here. So, I'll start out today by, person contacted us from Georgia, and it says, this is the note from one of our paralegals that enrolled in. It says he received a summons recently, and we went over protections and what we do, and enrolled with Helps. So I'm going to talk about what happens if you get sued. Now, I've talked about it before, but a lot of new people are on here. And even if you're not new, it's kind of, you want to know, well, what happens if I get sued? Well, first off, what is a lawsuit? A lawsuit is a proceeding in court where someone goes to the court and says that you owe them money. For example, a credit card. They say you owe a credit card, you haven't paid it, and we want an order from the court saying that you owe this amount of money. And the way they normally do it is they file some papers. Often it's two parts. One is called a summons and one is called a complaint. Now, I'll explain what that is. A summons, it's not a magic word. All that is a piece of paper that says you're being sued. This is the court name. This is the case number. You have to do, if you want to contest or fight the lawsuit, you have to file some paperwork within a certain amount of time. So that's the summons. And then the next piece of paper that's usually attached to that is what's called a complaint. And that's where the person that sued you details why you owe the money. What's it for? You owe money to U.S. Bank. You owe money to Discovery. You owe money to American Express. It doesn't matter who. You owe money on a car that went repossessed. And how much you owe. And how much is the interest rate. And then they ask that they be awarded a judgment for so much money. And then what happens is this paperwork gets prepared by a person to whom you owe money, and then they file it in court, okay? And then they pay a fee to the court. And then once they pay that fee, they give it to someone to serve it on you, to knock on your door and give you the paperwork. That could be a sheriff's deputy. Now, it wouldn't be a criminal sheriff deputy, it'd be a civil deputy. In almost every county in the United States, the sheriff's offices, they have a deputy in the sheriff's office, or more than one on big counties, that what they do is they serve legal papers, and they can serve lawsuits. It's not a crime. You're not going to jail if a sheriff deputy knocks on your door and gives you this paperwork. Now, got any questions on any of this stuff or anything else, put in the chat feature. I'll get to that in a second. I'm just talking about a lawsuit here for a minute. Now, you could have a private party serve it on you, and they get paid for doing that. If they're successful in serving you, they're going to get paid $25, $35, $45, whatever it costs according to the state where you live. And so they're anxious to try to serve you. Now, you don't have to make it easier on them. If they call you on the phone, you don't have to come to the door, but if they happen to serve you, that's fine. Now, once you're served, there's a certain amount of days given for you to fight the lawsuit if you intend to do that. Most of our Helps clients don't do that. They don't want to do that. Why? Well, first off, they owe the money. Second off, if they've been listening to me and helps, they understand that their Social Security, their pension, their disability, their VA benefits, their retirement income, virtually all forms of retirement income are protected by federal and state laws. It can't be taken from you. Okay. So if you get Social Security, no one can garnish it. Now, what garnishing means is if someone gets a judgment, that's the next step the creditor can do, is they try to garnish your wages or garnish a bank account. But they can't garnish Social Security and they can't garnish a pension. They can't take your pension. They can't take your Social Security. What about if it hits the bank account? Well, there's a federal law went into effect in 2012 that instructs banks and credit unions that they're to protect twice the amount of federal benefits that you get deposited in your bank account from garnishment, regardless of what funds are in there or where they came from. So if you got 1,500 in Social Security, that would mean what 3,000 is protected automatically in your bank account. Okay. So as long as you keep less than that in there, if a bank got rid of garnishment, they'd throw it away. Okay. So for that reason, seniors, with few exceptions, really don't need to worry if they get sued. Okay. Now, are they going to take my other property? Well, really, no. And I'll explain why. Virtually every state has what's called exemption laws. Those are laws that protect certain property that you own from a collector taking that property. For example, they'll protect so much value in household goods, so much equity that you have in a car. What's equity? That's how much the car is worth, or it's how much it's worth less than what you owe. It's the equity you have in it. Okay, or so much equity in a home. So that's what they do. Um, they protect that. Um, Now, what if you have property that's worth more than your state exemption? Let's say you've got a car that's worth $10,000, but the exemption for your state is only you can keep a car that's worth $3,000. Are they going to come take your car? No, no. Can they do it? Yeah, theoretically possible. Do they do it? Virtually never. Why? Well, I'm 74 years old, been doing this for 46 years. It's not the practice of consumer judgment creditors like a credit card company to ever go after your car. Now, if you owe money on the car and they have a loan on the car and they have the title, then yeah, they're going to try to repossess the car generally, unless it's not worth a whole lot. But a creditor for a credit card company, they're not going to do that. Okay. So are they going to take your household goods? No. And then a lot of states have what's called, I call it a wild card exemption. It's an amount of exemption that you have that if it's not listed under state law, um, this amount of money or this amount of equity is protected. For example, Texas has I think it's got like a $50,000 exemption that covers anything else that isn't protected. And for that reason, it's almost impossible for a judgment creditor to do anything to anyone in Texas. So no. So that's our message to seniors is that, your Social Security is protected, so is your pension, so is your other forms of retirement. Um, you don't need to use it to pay a debt you can't afford to pay. You don't need to go without food or medicine, okay, or heat or air conditioning or the necessities of life to pay a debt. Now, there's another law that was passed in 1978, the year I graduated from law school, called the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. That law provides that if a debt collector sent what's called a cease and desist letter, that debt collector can no longer call you or send demand letters anymore. It also provides if you're represented by an attorney, then collectors have to communicate with the attorney, not you. And that's what HELPS does. We represent seniors in all 50 states who owe debt in order to stop collectors from harassing them. Okay. So when they find out about HELPS, They enroll with helps. They give us the creditors to whom they owe money. Then we're going to send out a cease and desist letter to that creditor, and they're going to leave you alone. Your peace is going to come back to your life. That's what we do. We don't want you to worry. So I will try to answer some questions here if we got some. Sunset Cliff is acting as my kind of a moderator. You're right. If you don't get a question answered, call the office. Okay. Or repeat the question in the chat feature if I miss it. Okay. I appreciate all your support out there. So Mrs. H asked, I want to know if you heard of a HOA telling people buying their home that they cannot let people live with them, with seniors losing a place to stay at times. It's hard. HOAs stands for homeowner association. And some of them have pretty bad reputations for being very assertive and being very controlling. They have a board of directors and they can have different rules. Some homeowners associations, one I'm familiar with, they only allow seniors to live there. And then they have regulations. If you have someone move in with you, they have to be over a certain age. Otherwise, they can only be there for a short period of time. And then they wouldn't want you turning your house into a rental unit where you're renting to a lot of people. So they may have regulations. It depends. Okay. I think most of them are pretty generous, are not going to cause a problem, but I've seen it for YouTube videos about homeowner associations, directors getting pretty aggressive on different things. Okay. So that's the scoop on lawsuits. You don't need to worry if you're sued. Now, what happens if a helps client is sued? Okay. So if we have 5 people that call helps, maybe one is completely current on their debt, maybe 3 or 4 are behind or being harassed, and maybe 1 out of 5 has been sued. So if you've been sued, you call us. We're going to ask you to get us a copy of the lawsuit. We don't need everything. All we need is the first, like 2 or 3 pages. We need the case number, the name of the court, and then the attorney's name and address. And then what we're going to do is we're going to send a letter to that attorney who sued you, and we're going to explain to him that your income is protected. You can't pay the debt. We're going to tell them not to bother your bank account, and they can't anyway for the reasons that I just explained. And then we're going to call you and explain to you why you don't need to worry. We're going to send you emails with links to videos explaining lawsuits and why your income is protected. And then if you get any other paperwork down the road, you're going to get it to us. We'll answer the questions so you don't worry. The whole purpose of helps is if you're ever worried or scared, you pick up the phone and you call, no matter how often. That's what we're here for. Okay? So that's the scoop on lawsuits. And good to have you here. Press the like button. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel, please subscribe to our channel. More people find out about helps from YouTube videos than any other source. Okay? And so there's a lot of seniors that need this help that have no idea it's available. Okay? And so anything we can to get the word out is going to be helpful. And that way, if you click the like button, that makes it more likely that YouTube will share it with other people. Or if you subscribe to the channel. So Daryl asked the questions. We sold our house several years ago, rented for a couple of years, and then bought another house. Our will was on the house we sold. What do we need to do to update the will for the new house? Well, normally a will, a lot of our clients don't need wills, and I'll explain why in a second. But normally a will would not normally a will would not list a specific piece of property. It would just say that I give my home to so and so or something like that. Okay. So let me talk a little bit about homes. A lot of our, not a, we have a fair number of clients that are buying a home. And so if you're buying a home, let's say you're married. And normally, then, if you're married, the home is in your name and your wife's name together, or your husband's name together. And you own it with what's called rights of survivorship, which means if one of you pass away, the other one gets the home automatically. So a will doesn't come into place when one of the spouses die. The property automatically goes to the other spouse. Sometimes people will add their kid's name to the home as joint owners with survivorship rights. So that means that if mom dies, and then the property goes to dad and the kids, and then when dad dies, the property goes to the kids. A will wouldn't come into play. The will would the property would just automatically transfer to the kids. There's some advantages to that. You can't do that in every state, and it's not always a good idea, but it can be, especially when there's not a lot of equity in the home. That way, the kids, if the kids' name on the home with you, when you pass away, the home goes to the kids. They can simply sell the home, pocket the money. But the magic about it is they wouldn't have to pay any of your debt. If you die owing debt, the debt won't have to be paid. The only thing they'd have to pay is any mortgage that's still owed on the home. Okay. Um, so that way you can protect the equity for your children. So let's see. Ms. HS, when you owe money to a bank, when you when you when your money goes into a protected account, don't follow your question. Um, the question is, I guess, I'll answer it this way: banks don't make mistakes on this area. Okay, so you're asking me if someone sues you and gets a judgment, and I've explained how your money is protected, and I've also explained how it's protected in your bank account. Now, it's protected in your bank account, in the account to which your Social Security or your federal benefit is deposited. Um, so if you got $1,000 in Social Security, 2,000 in your bank account is protected automatically by your bank. Do the banks make mistakes on that? Pretty much not anymore. We don't really run into it anymore. It used to be a while that credit unions were making mistakes, but they're not making mistakes anymore. If they ever were, you'd get a hold of helps. We'd be able to unravel it for you. What the law says that when a bank gets a writ of garnishment on a bank account, which means someone sued you and got a judgment, and then they notify your bank that they want your money that's in your account. The bank examines your account, and if money came there from a federal source like Social Security, they times the amount you get each month times two, and they protect that automatically without you having to do anything. Okay? So you're not going to need to worry about that. Now, uh, if you happen to have more than twice the amount in there, and it came from a federal source like Social Security, they could hold up the excess, but you can file what's called a challenge to garnishment or claim exemption to get that released. Okay? Um, I don't know what a Pendion account is. If I don't seem to answer a question, or if you got a confusion about what I say on YouTube Live here, you can always, always, give us a call. So you say they knew it was protected and they still did it. Well, you'd have to call us. We go over that because you know I've yet to talk to a bank manager. Yeah, no, I've yet to talk to a bank manager or that understands the rule. Then they don't understand the rule. Now there's a department in the bank that deals with garnishments. They understand the rule. Okay, so don't be worried about losing money if someone sues you. out of your bank account. Now, if you talk to the teller or your local bank manager, they're going to give you wrong information because they just don't know the rule. But there's a department in your bank that does understand the rule. Okay. But like if you had a savings account, but your money went into a checking account, yeah, they could hold up the money in your savings account. That's why a lot of times I'll tell people you don't get enough interest, get rid of the savings account. Okay. Now, if it's just a little bit in there, you may not worry about it because the chance of you being garnished, frankly, are probably pretty remote. You got to remember, when you enroll in helps, we're going to send a cease and desist letter out to your creditors. Or we're going to send a letter to the attorney that sued you and let them know that your income's protected. So it's not very often that they even follow up by doing anything. So the bank manager doesn't have any control over, ordering that your money be sent to a creditor. He may say he does, but he doesn't. There's a department in the bank that deals with garnishments, and they're the ones that understand this law. Okay. So I kind of talked about that for a while. So, I'll go on here. So this person, this was kind of interesting. Did I talk to them today? Oh yeah, I think I did. They called us from Michigan. He had a car loan that he owed $9,000 on it, but it was only worth $6,000. Okay. And it was with a credit union. And then he had 3 other loans with the credit union. He had a credit card with the credit union, and then he had 2 other loans with the credit union. And all those loans totaled about $5,000 extra dollars. And then on top of that, he owed some money from a student loan from 10 or 15 years ago. And he had been on an income-based repayment plan, but that had expired a long time ago. And he just got a notice that they were going to offset 15% of his Social Security. So I talked to him about getting back on an income-based repayment plan, but told him there might be a better idea. And this is kind of unusual, and it may not apply to you, but I'm going to explain it. He could file a form of bankruptcy called a Chapter 13. Now, there's different types of bankruptcies. Mostly the consumers, the only bankruptcies you worry about is a regular bankruptcy, which is Chapter 7 and Chapter 13. Now, Chapter 13 is usually filed if if you're behind on your house payment, you need to get caught up, you need to stop a foreclosure. Mostly, almost never does a senior file bankruptcy, including a Chapter 13. But in this case, Chapter 13 could make sense because under Chapter 13, if you owe more than on a car than it's worth, you can design the plan to only pay what the car is worth, not what you owe. And so in this case, he had a car he owed $9,000, but it was only worth $5,000. So he could file a chapter, and he owed money on the car to the credit union. And these other 3 debts he had, the credit card and the 2 other loans, were with the credit union. And the credit union has what's called a cross-collateralization agreement. So he really owed $9,000 plus $5,000 on the car. He owed $14,000 on this car, so when he signed up for the credit card and these other loans, lo and behold, he didn't realize he did it. He signed an agreement with the credit union that money he owed for those other debts would also be a lien on the car. So I explained to him, I said, you keep making that car payment, you're going to have to pay $9,000 on that car. It's worth $5,000. They're never going to give you the title until you pay the other 2 loans, which total another $5,000. So he could file a Chapter 13 and only have to pay $5,000 on the car and wipe out the rest of the money he owes on to the credit union. He won't have to pay that. The $4,000 excess he owes on the car, plus the $5,000 in the other debt. And then on top of that, the Chapter 13 would stop student loans from garnishing his Social Security. He made about $2,000 Social Security. They're going to take $300. And in my mind, because I've done a ton of bankruptcies in the past, he might end up with a Chapter 13 payment of $300 or less. That would pay the attorney fees, the and the car, and the other debts won't get paid because he doesn't have that enough income to pay that. And then so he'll be able to solve all the problems one fell swoop. So I told him, I said, you really don't need helps, and I told him he lives in Michigan. I said, need to find an attorney that specializes in Chapter 13 and um, talk to them, and hopefully they're going to be able to give you the correct information and be able to help you. Now, this isn't going to apply to 99% of you listening to me, but I talked about it. It's kind of interesting. The thing about helps is, you know, we don't give advice, we give legal information. And so you can ask us questions about your situation. Uh, we're not a rubber stamp. You know, if you call a debt management company and got a financial problem, they're a rubber stamp. They're going to try to enroll you in debt management with a few exceptions, and they're never going to tell you your income is protected. No, we're going to give you the complete information that you need so that to help you, so you don't need to worry. Okay. Let's see if we got questions here. Um, so let me back up here. Um, what if married couple both get Social Security? Is it 2 times each in the same account? You bet it is. Yeah. Now I'll tell people to do that sometimes. They may have separate bank accounts. I'll say, if you combine into one account, then you can protect more money because it's twice the amount of your Social Security benefits. It doesn't matter whose name is on the account with you. All the bank has to do is examine where the money came from. Twice that amount is protected. So Daryl says, if a creditor has been awarded judgment against you and put a lien on your home, your asset, does that prevent the sale of your home while you're living? Well, as I explained earlier, different states have different homestead exemptions that protect equity in home. Now, if the judgment is against like the husband and you're married, but the home is owned by the husband and wife, no, they can't do anything about the home. It's not the practice of consumer judgment creditors, Daryl, to go after a person's equity and property, even if they have equity in the property over and above the homestead. So no, you're not going to need to worry about that. You're losing your home. Okay. Now, there's things you could do to make it more ironclad. Make sure you could add the kid's name to the title of the home before there's a judgment. Therefore, there's different things. But if they did try to do something, there's things that could be done to prevent it, but it just doesn't happen. So I normally don't even need to talk about it. Okay. Now I know what I'm talking about because I've been involved with helps for the last 14, 15 years, and for that did 30 to 40,000 bankruptcies. It's not the practice of consumer judgment creditors like credit cards to go after people's homes. They don't do it. Okay. Even if you have equity over and above the exemption. So go ahead and put your questions in the chat feature, and I'll try to answer them. Should be able to answer them. So I guess Daryl asked, does that prevent the sale of the home while you're living if they have a judgment lien? Depends on your state. I'll give you an example. Like in Florida, there's a paperwork you can file to get the lien released, and it gives you 6 months to sell the home. If it doesn't get sold, you can redo the paperwork. In Texas, you can have a judgment lien removed because they have an unlimited exemption on your home if it's under a certain amount of acres. In same thing as in California. It depends on the state, but in some states, yeah, it could prevent you from selling the home. Won't prevent you from selling the homes. It means that in order for you to sell the home, you'd have to provide that in the sale of the home that judgment would be paid. So it depends on your state. You can call and talk to us. We can go over the law, but for a lot of reasons, it just doesn't happen. So Brenda says, I may file Chapter 13. You may want to talk to us. I talk to a lot of people that are involved in Chapter 13 that have no business being there. It put them in utter poverty when they don't need to be there. Hmm. Okay. Okay, let's go on. Other things to talk about. Okay. This guy calls us from California. He's got uh, cancer, 47 years old. What's that? Oh, I thought you were talking to me. No, talking on the phone. Okay. Um, he gets Social Security as the only income. He says, I rent a room. I can barely afford anything other than that. I need a vehicle to get to my appointments and treatment. I could use any help. Thank you. Um, what helps does is, we protect creditors. We protect you from debt creditors bothering you. And we try to educate seniors how they can maintain their financial independence. We're going to help seniors that are paying debt they don't have to pay, so they understand they don't have to pay that debt. Might explain to them, if they have a car they can't afford, they don't need to keep the car. So that's what we do. One thing we can't do is put more money in your pocket. We don't have the ability to do that. But we talk to people about getting on Section 8 housing, subsidized housing, uh, and we do a lot of things to be able to help. So you call if you have a question. We'll be glad to go over it with you. Um, so this person writes in, I would love some information about lowering my debt. Is this company backed by Better Business Bureau, BBB? Okay. So I've talked a little bit about the Better Business Bureau before. Um, okay, the Better Business Bureau is like when they invented the automobile, horses and wagons went out of style. Okay, or the Better Business Bureau was great before the internet. That was fine. Okay, but nowadays it's a dinosaur. Okay, why is it? Well, Better Business Bureau is not a government organization. It's like McDonald's. You can buy a franchise and run Better Business Bureau where you live. Okay, and it's really easy to manipulate the Better Business Bureau ratings, and you pay to be in part of Better Business Bureau. Okay, if you want to find out a legitimacy of a company, is just go on the internet, Google reviews. There's so many ways to find out whether some company is legitimate. Better Business Bureau. In fact, whenever I see a company that lists all these recommendations, including BBB, and they make it really prompt, a lot of times I get nervous. I think this possibly could be a con because a lot of companies that are cons will tout Better Business Bureau because they can manipulate the ratings. So it's not always a good answer. Nothing wrong with it, I guess, but I've just seen too many times when a company that I know is not doing good things really pushes BBB to try to persuade people to think that they're legitimate. Okay. The Treasury Department sent me a letter saying they're going to take 15% from my Social Security for a student loan debt. I only get $800 for Social Security. What can I do? I until July to clear this up. Well, they can't take 15%. 750 at minimum is protected, so they could take $59. But you can apply for what's called income-based repayment plan. Uh, this is really going to be tough for a lot of seniors. This activity on collecting on old student loans. They've really made it complicated for people to apply for income-based repayment plan. We got an email that explains on how it can be done. Um, but it's kind of confusing. It's going to cause a lot of hardship for people. We're going to try to make it streamlined for people, but it's going to be difficult if it keeps going on like this. I mean, I'm not excited about it. Generally, if your only income is Social Security, you're easily going to qualify for income-based repayment plan, and you shouldn't have to pay anything towards the student loan. You don't have enough money to pay it. Okay. Okay, this person contacts us, says, I'm 68 years old. I need serious help with my debt. My retirement is my only income. And he's got a precancerous condition. So he's got a lot of medical issues going on. A lot of medical issues going on. I talked about their work. Because you can't work now. It says those days are over for me. Every day now, I'm just scared all the time. I've never been in a situation like this in my life, and I have no idea what to do. Can you please help me? I really don't know what to do. I know I can't afford to file bankruptcy, and I'm always afraid I'll be arrested for the money I owe. No, there's no debtor's prison. If you don't pay your debt, you're not going to jail. You don't. That's the last thing on earth you need to worry about. Okay. I'll be waiting to hear from you. I know I'll send this tonight, but I may call before or on Friday to make sure this is received. Thank you so very much for listening. I would truly appreciate any assistance or advice. So we're going to talk to this guy and explain to him why his retirement income is protected. He doesn't need to worry about this debt. You don't need to worry. And if you're in that situation, you don't need to worry. You can always pick up the phone and you call us. Toll free 855-435-7787. Toll free. You can always give us a call. When this person contacts us, they say, um, I need help with credit card debt. It just got charged off and went to a collector. They said uh, they are going to file a lawsuit. It says I can make a payment or discuss options. I tried to negotiate with them to get a hardship, but they would not agree to payments or hardship because I did not make enough money and wouldn't cover. Said he's almost 80 years old, low income with health issues, heart failure. He goes on with all his problems. I can't work. I own my home just on Social Security. Can you advise me? Yeah. You know, your Social Security is protected. They can't take it. Got to remember, a debt collector is never going to tell you the fact that your income is protected, that they can't take it from you. All they have to tell you is that we're a debt collector. Any information we get can be used for that purpose. That's what helps us here for. We're here to tell you that your income is safe. It can't be taken from you. You're going to be okay. We can prevent these predators from bothering you. You're going to be okay. So this guy calls us from Michigan. He says, I am, I'm in deep debt to credit cards and don't see a way out. Well, you don't need to worry about it. If you're on Social Security, your pension, your income's protected, you can stop paying the credit cards. We can prevent them, stop them from calling you. You're not going to need to worry. You're going to be fine. Remember, you can always call us no matter how often. Okay. So let me see if there's some comments I missed. Okay. Here we go. Okay. So Daryl asked, uh, protecting again, is that based on the gross amount or the net amount after taxes were withheld? It's based on the net. It, um, we're talking about automatic protections here. Okay. So, um, if a creditor were to sue you and get a judgment, the bank doesn't know what the gross amount is. All they know is how much has been deposited into your account. Okay. And if that came from a federal source like Social Security, they protect twice the monthly amount you get each month automatically. They don't know the gross. All they know is what's been deposited, just twice the amount of if it's federal benefits that are. Now, if there's other monies in there, they're protected too. It doesn't matter where they came from. If you had 1,500 in Social Security, 3,000 in your account is protected, even if some of the money came from another form of retirement that wasn't a federal retirement. That's protected in your bank account as long as the balance is less than 3,000, twice the amount of your federal benefit that's deposited. So you've been talking a little bit about property here. Yeah, when you buy a piece of land, normally it is as is. If there's problems with it, probably don't have a remedy. I mean, there's a few exceptions. Okay, see, we're talking about electrical boxes here. Okay, so let's go on with some more questions people had here. So if you're like this guy, you're deep in debt to credit cards and don't see a way out, give us a call. You're going to be fine. You don't need to worry. Okay. Okay. This person contacts from Kentucky. I've been approved and just received my first Social Security payment. I've been paying the mortgage that is in my late wife's name. She passed in 2021. The mortgage company, Truist, was unwilling to transfer the mortgage to me without a new mortgage application, even though I co signed for her at the time. You didn't need to do that. You don't need to, I mean, all you need to do is to keep making the mortgage payment. It doesn't need to be put in your name. Okay. Yeah, you wouldn't want to change anyway. The interest rate back then was a lot better than it would be today. So yeah, if you've got if you happen to come into a home and just keep making the payment. All the bank cares about is they're getting the payment on time. They don't care whose name is on the mortgage. Okay, as long as your name is on the deed. Okay. Um, he goes on. He said, "What is he going to say?" I've been paying state and federal taxes for some time. I went to tax resolution advocates in an effort to get help long before I'd ever heard of helps. I've been paying them, oh my gosh, $1,000 a month. And at last check, I was told that the remaining balance of them was 18,000. I read on your website about asking to be put on currently not collectible status, currently uncollectible status with the IRS. I'm reaching out to you because I have to contact the Kentucky Department of Revenue to stay current with my state tax payment. If you owe taxes to the state, I'm not talking about the IRS, I'm talking about the state. A state can't take your Social Security, they can't take your pension, they can't take your retirement. the money in your bank account, twice the amount of your federal funds, is protected from a state tax collector, just like it is from a credit card company. You don't need to pay the state. And we'll tell this guy this. So I'll ask whether something can be worked out because I don't know what other alternatives might be available with state taxes. You don't need to pay them. Now, obviously, if you can afford to pay them, we want you to pay them, but you don't need to go without food or medicine or utilities, or basic needs to pay a state tax debt. It's protected. They can't take your Social Security. Um, the IRS isn't going to come after your home if you owe debt. They'll file a tax. They might file a tax lien, but they have 10 years to collect the tax. After 10 years, the lien disappears. IRS is not in the practice of taking people's homes. Now, you might read about it occasionally, but that would be a multi-trillionaire person that has a mansion that's huge and has thumbed the nose at the IRS. But no, they don't go after common people's homes. They don't do that. Okay? They're not going to take your home. So this person contacts us from Kentucky, considering doing a bankruptcy my husband for my husband and me. We have Social Security income only, looking for other solutions than bankruptcy. Yeah, if your only income is Social Security, uh, I can't really think of a reason why you would need to file bankruptcy. It'd be very, very usually unusual. Why? Because your Social Security is protected. You can be protected from debt collector harassment. You don't need to file bankruptcy. You can't afford to file bankruptcy. Sometimes bankruptcy it's you like rare rabbit, it gets you into the briar patch and you can turn into a mess. This person contacts us says, you helped me in 2020 and 2021. I need assistance down. I need to know how to get started. Please let me know as soon as time permits. Thank you kindly. Well, if this person was with Helps and was one of our clients, then they're still our client. When people enroll in Helps, they're our client literally forever. Uh, uh, the only reason you would not be a client is if you ask not to no longer have us help you, or if we weren't able to communicate with you. But you're literally our client forever. Okay. When you enroll in Helps. Why is that? Well, because there's a good chance that you're going to get another collection notice from a new debt collector down the road. And then you're going to give that to us. We're going to see a cease and desist letter to that new debt collector. You might get sued down the road. So help is ongoing. It's not just one time. That's the only way this works. We have to be able to help people ongoing so they don't have to worry. Okay. Dale says, if I get sued and I don't reply to the lawsuit and then I get a default judgment signed by a judge, am I going to have to go to court? No. It's just the debt collector could try to do some follow-up work to ask you some more questions. If that ever happens with a Helps client, you give us a copy, whatever you got, we'll tell you what to do with it. But no, you don't expect that you would have to go to court after someone gets a judgment. Now, you may have heard me talk about debtor's exams. I don't like to talk about those because it's so rare. We get those resolved. I wouldn't worry about that. Okay, let's see if there's more questions you got here. Eric, if you get sued, what do you think about compelling arbitration? Well, okay. What does Brian mean by that? Well, in some jurisdictions, if you get sued, in order to save time, the court will instead of having you go to the court and have a judge decide anything, they'll put it in arbitration, when in other words, they'll have someone that will listen to both parties and make a decision. A lot of times, if you go into arbitration, you're gonna get charged a fee. It means that the credit card company is gonna have to pay a fee for an arbitrator, and you're technically gonna have to pay a fee. You know, some people, not very many, but a few people make a practice of trying to make it difficult on the debt collector if they get sued. We don't give that kind of advice, but um, you know, Brian, if your income, Social Security, and pension, you don't need to worry about doing anything unless you're into it and you want to get into it and want to try to ruffle people's feathers and cause as much, you know, try to make it harder on them. You can do that. It's up to you. I think you understand what I'm saying, hopefully. If you pay for 75 months and have a balloon payment at the end because of the payment extensions at the end of the contract, can they repo the car if you can't pay off the car because the final payment is too much, more than could be paid? Well, technically, that's possible. Technically, that's possible. I don't think is a, you may want to plan, I mean, there's ways you could prevent it, but it's more too complicated to go into in this type of form. And if it's something that's gonna be years down the road, you know, try to plan for that. Okay, let's see what else we got here. Looks like we're almost done for the day. Hope you can help me. They say, I was served papers today and I'm unfamiliar with all the legal terms. Yeah, I know. I'm 71 years old and I'm a widow and live on Social Security and my late husband's teacher retirement. Thanks in advance for your help. Well, your Social Security is going to be protected. So is your late husband's retirement. If you owe the money and you were sued, you're not going to have to do anything. You know, if you're willing to help, you're going to send a letter to that debt collector, the attorney that sued you, let them know your income's protected. They're going to leave you alone. And the whole purpose helps. If you ever have a question, you're going to call us on the phone. But you don't need to worry. Yeah, we don't want you to worry. So the person that says they don't understand the terms, yeah, I understand exactly what you are talking about. One of my favorite examples is what they do in Virginia. You don't get you don't get a summons and complaint in Virginia. You get what's called a warrant in debt. And when you hear the word warrant, you think, oh my gosh, that's someone's going to arrest me. So depends where you live. But if you have questions on any of this stuff, you just give us a call and we'll go over it. Yeah, we don't want you to worry. Okay. So it looks like we've come to the end of another exciting day with helps. I appreciate your patience with me. And if you have any questions, be sure and call us toll free 855-435-7787. 855 435 7780 or 855 helps us or helps us. Okay. You can always call and talk to us. Nothing to worry about. Have a great day and God bless. Talk to you later. Oh, should I just leave these boxes here and someone can remove?